Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Learning with Jelly. Today, we're going to go over for loops in Python as our second video in our Python for Fundamentals series. This series is dedicated to get us some fundamentals underneath our belt so that we can graduate to doing machine learning models and other things under the data science and data analytics umbrella so that we can be prepared for that. So the first video was all about strings. In order to follow along, I'm going to link the GitHub in the description where within the Python fundamentals folders, you can follow along and you have access to the code, okay? But if not, feel free to open up your own shell where you do Python, whether it's Jupyter Notebook, Google Colab, Visual Studio Code, whatever you have, so that we can practice along. So Python for loops, let's get started. So some objectives is we're going to understand why for loops are important in data science or data analytics and why should we care in the first place. What actually is a for loop? We're going to talk about the range function, which is a built-in Python function that you may find yourself using a lot of. Conditional statements in for loops. So those are going to be our if-else statements. And at the end of this, you should practice on creating your own for loops. Okay, so why for loops to begin with? It's to stress you out. No, it's not. It's to minimize code repetition. So why code 15 lines when you can do 2? I have used for loops personally when I have to read in tons of data files. So say for instance, I'm doing image classification and I have to read in thousands and thousands of images, right? I can just cycle through a loop to just read every image in besides writing 1,000-line code that's going to read each image in separately, okay? So for loops can minimize that repetition. People would love your code even that much more because it's very efficient and streamlined. All right, so what is this for loop thing? Okay, so it's a mechanism for iterating over a particular sequence. And how I like to think about this is it's for item in some type of collection. Okay, your collection could be a list, it could be a dictionary, anything of that nature. It can be a range function, which we're going to talk about momentarily. So this is our predominant keyword syntax in a for loop. And don't forget your colon at the end. For some item in a collection, do this. And I could be X, it could be any letter or word that you want to. And like I said, do not repeat yourself. People hate when your code is very repetitious. So for loops are going to help us with that. So let's see some for loops in action. Okay. And so we have a for loop here where we have a list of 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we're saying for number in X, X being our collection, what is list, print this is file in that actual number. So you see that num is showing up again in my print statement here. So when I run this for loop, it says this is file 1, this is file 2, this is file 3, this is file 4. So it's going to iterate through this list 4 times, right? So it's going to say, hey, print out something for 1, next go to 2, next go to 3, next go to 4. I'm at the end of my collection, right? And so now my for loop stops executing. Okay, so this is our item. So for item, this could have been this could have been nums, this could have been pizza. Okay, so don't get hung up for what it is in between the 4 and the n. Okay, so outside of that, there's this concept or this function, better yet, called a range function. And it's going to loop through a set of code a specified number of times. So the default in Python is that it's going to start at 0 and it's going to increment by 1 every time. So an example is I can have a range of 5. So that is going to start at 0 and it's going to end at 4. So up to, but not including the number that's actually in the parentheses. So let's see how this works, okay? So for X in range of 5, right? Range of 5 is its own collection. I want to print X. So range of 5 is going to print out 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 5 numbers starting at 0. So it's up to, but not including the number that's in the parentheses. So if I hit 10, what do you think it's going to print out? 0 to 9. Okay. So now when I run this code again, I get 0 to 9. So this is a simple for loop, and you may see this range function used often when we're generating random variables, when we want to find a length of a column, things of that nature. Okay. And so this is a simple for loop where it's going to go and it's going to iterate X amount of times, up to, but not including the number in parentheses. Okay, so that is the range function. Now let's talk about conditional statements, okay? So there's tons of comparison operators. These are the main ones that we utilize the most. We have less than or equal to, not equal to. Equal to is 2 equal signs. Keep that in mind. Greater than or equal to and greater than, okay? So it's good to know these comparison operators because they will show up again. And now let's see how this is going to look, okay? So I have a collection here, which is a list, and we're going to talk about lists in the next video, but it has -1, 10, -16, 54. And then here, I'm just creating a blank list before my for loop, okay? And so I'm saying for num, remember num could be anything, in nums, keep in mind that nums is the collection, and the collection that we have here is the list right here, right? So for num in this list, if num is less than 0, that means that it's negative, then add or dot append, that's a method, that number to my empty list. So I pretty much want to get a list of all of my negative numbers that are in this collection, which is nums. So then when I run this code, I get the negative numbers back, -1 and -16, right? So what if I don't want to just get the negative numbers? I want to also get the positive numbers, right? So I'm going to say for num, in num. So once again, look at this collection that I have up here. If it is less than 0, I want to append that to my negative numbers list. Else, I want to append it to my positive numbers list, and I want to return both lists. So when we run this, we get one list of negative numbers, which is -1, -16, and we get our other list of positive numbers, which is 10 and 54. Okay, so once again, we're looping through some collection, and based off of a condition, we're adding those collections or those items in the collections to 2 separate lists. Okay. So for loops take a lot of practice. I highly encourage you to practice this. Okay. Make up your own list of numbers, make up your own list of strings, and just kind of make basic for loops starting out. Okay, so that is our quick introduction to for loops. I highly recommend that you practice for loops. They're very, very useful when you want to reduce repetition in your code. But if for loops aren't your thing, maybe things like list comprehensions and dictionary comprehensions will be your go-to, which is going to be the following videos. Thank you. Please like, comment, and subscribe to Learning with Jelly, and I'll see you at the next video.